What's up, you guys? Sean Ross Sapp, Fightful, here with a name you know. You've seen him here on Fightful in the past. You can see him every Thursday on Access, TNA Impact. We've got Jake something. Jake, how you doing, man?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing wonderful, man. I feel like the last time we spoke was in person, maybe October. Was it 2022?
Yeah, I think so. I'm trying to remember what month it was because we were outside.
It was Fright Night. It was the Billy Stark show that they did the Black Label Pro thing, and we did the interview outside.
I got stung by a bee.
Did you?
Yeah, right before my match, I wrestled Dan the Dad, I think,
Mm-hmm.
and I went outside and I got stung on my stomach by a bee, and then I went and wrestled directly after. I mean, it's not that big of a deal, but
I mean, listen. If I had to face you in a wrestling match, I would definitely bring bees. I
yeah,
would any tactic that I could find to possibly beat you. I've mentioned this before. The way that you and I met was actually backstage at one of those shows, and it was
yeah,
very tight quarters. I was granted interviews, and I had obviously seen your work before, but I had never seen how physically imposing you were. And you're like the nicest guy, and we kept bumping into each other. And I
yeah,
felt like I was going to take an actual bump
yeah.
during that process.
Yeah,
But
by accident, an accidental bump.
yes, accidental bump. But I mean, things have blown up for you since then. You've had a couple of runs in
Mm.
Impact, now TNA since then. But you spent over a year away from TNA and came back. I'd love to know what led to this decision, and how did the process go to bring you back to now TNA?
Man, it was awesome, but also scary, kind of like leaving the coop and being on your own. Uh, but it was very cool to do, and it was like almost like something I felt like I had to do, right? And I think in doing so, it kind of gave them more respect for me. I think it gave me more respect for them. I think I got to build my name a little bit more. And I'm going to be honest, throughout, like I didn't necessarily want to leave, but I thought I had to. So coming back was like relatively easy. I sent a text message. Well, I was talking to Josh Alexander a little bit before. Just throughout that year or so, we'd communicate like, hey, how are things going? What do you want to do? And, I still wanted to be in TNA, but time wasn't right, whatever. And then I was talking to Josh, and he kind of, in his own way, was like, hey, I don't know what you got planned, but I think the time is right now. And I was like, oh, yeah? And then I sent, ex-president Scott Demore a message. I was like, hey, man, I think we should do some business. And I mean, 2 minutes later, he was like, let's do some business. And then within
Love it.
minutes, we made the deal or whatever,
I've seen you mention in the past some of the business you'd like to do is with the TNA legend, Monty Brown.
Yes.
I can tell you, I have pulled every string possible to do interviews, anything. Like the guy is very polite, very nice. He just hasn't seemed interested in doing anything wrestling related.
Right.
He did do a charity show for Kevin Thorne one time. He
Yeah.
has been backstage. He's still jacked.
Oh, he's huge. So he would be a personal trainer at this gym in Saginaw that I would go to. And he has a giant the gym has since changed, but there's a giant picture of his giant body right in there because he's like a popular guy there.
Yeah.
But I think if I remember correctly, I was on a show in Saginaw like years ago when I first started. Rohit was on the show too. I'm pretty sure Monty came in there and did a pounce to somebody, or he did something like that. But he was always around in those Saginaw shows. He would stop in, say hi, and that kind of stuff.
I feel like Rohit told me that like he'll see Monty at like the grocery store sometimes.
On
He'll size him up for like a pounce, like
yeah,
in aisle 3. It's just
yeah,
insane.
it's awesome.
Insane. I
Yeah,
love it. But like, I'm not ready to say that this won't ever happen because of late, you have had a little something to do with Oleg Prudius.
yeah,
I didn't
cool.
see that one coming.
It's cool.
He just took off 10 years, the former Vladimir Kozlov. Next thing you know, you're wrestling Oleg Prudius at TNA Hard to Kill 2024.
Yeah,
Can't say that was on my bingo card at all.
no,
And
and
I
that
love that he's
man
back in there.
and that man pinned Undertaker clean right in the middle of the ring.
Yes,
So
he did.
he's honestly, Oleg is awesome. He's really awesome. I don't think people realize just they need to put like a documentary out about his life story because it's nuts. He's like a warrior. He's one of the strongest dudes I've ever met in my life. Also, one of the nicest dudes I've ever met in my life. So
So I mean, as that becomes a real possibility, I mean that's one of his longest matches that he's had. I think since I think he hasn't wrestled a match like over like 5 or 6 minutes since he left WWE.
yeah,
But I mean, he's still physically imposing. He's a lot younger than people think too.
yeah.
But I mean, like when you're told, "Oh, you're getting in the ring with Oleg Prudius," like what's going through your mind?
Well, honestly, the thing going through my mind was I saw him earlier in the day, way like in the venue before everything was completely set up. So it's kind
Yeah.
of a barren, empty, and he's just standing with his arms kind of crossed in a full suit, these shades, and he looked cool. But I was like, I didn't have my glasses on either, so I'm like, who is that? I was like, is that like a hitman? He looks like a hitman. And then when I went and shook his hand, first off, I felt like I was shaking two hands at once. But well, then I met him and I was just like, okay, so that's the image. It's not even his old image in like SmackDown. That's what I see every time I see him. Just like, oh, this dude's a killer.
One of the hot topics has been the TNA rebrand. Like especially from '05 to '09, like that was my thing. Like I was
Yeah,
really disenfranchised with the way that wrestling was elsewhere, and TNA was my go-to. Every week I was there watching, and I was so happy to see that rebrand come back or see that rebrand happen because it gave me like so much optimism, and it's also optimism for this company now, which
yeah.
has put out great shows for quite some time, but it just felt right. It felt like home, so to speak. Were you a TNA guy when you were younger?
Oh, absolutely. I have just recently I had found because I used to record every single episode and I
Oh,
just
wow.
found like a box full of TNA tapes. And the way I would do it would be like if it's a 6 hour tape, I think that those shows were maybe an hour long or something like that. So like I don't remember what days they would even used to come on, but let's say Thursday. Every Thursday I would put my tape in and I would record it. And then next Thursday I would do it again and then again and again. So then eventually tape number one would have 5 or 6 hours full of TNA and then go on to tape number 2 and 3 and 4. I found a box with like 20 of them. So I've got an archive.
I love that. And funny enough, over the course of about maybe a week or so, you were on the first TNA rebranded pay-per-view,
Mhm.
Impact, and one of the first Explosions,
Yeah.
because that's back in the fold now. I love that they brought that back too.
I love it too. And I just watched it. It has a really sick intro
Yeah.
that people need to know about because this is so I worked there and I was just like, oh yeah, let me watch this because I knew that Explosion was back. But it's not like they sent out an email. I was like, hey, we have a new intro for it, That's
Yeah.
just the thing that you find. So I was like, wait, what the heck?
Now you did compete for the TNA heavyweight title in 2021 when
Yeah.
Moose had brought it back. Was there any inkling then that this could be in the fold? Like we had heard rumors like maybe it was tossed around then, but they quickly merged those titles as well.
Yeah, so I'm gonna be honest, I was under the impression it would never happen because it seemed like the guys and girls in the locker rooms brought it up a lot.
Yeah.
Like every time we would all be together, I feel like someone would bring it up. And I feel like it was often shoot away, kinda. And then even we did the one night only TNA show. I can't even remember when we did that, but that was a thing that we did like within the last couple years, a few years, I guess. And then, like you said, we brought back the TNA heavyweight title. And so there's like little feelers out there that maybe they were trying to gauge an interest beyond just the locker room interest.
And then you get a win at the TNA rebranded Hard to Kill. How was that for you? Because I mean, obviously that's an integral show for
Yeah.
TNA.
I mean, it was electric for a lot of reasons. Even just when I first walked out, there was a lot of people there. It was like a
Yeah.
lot, you know? And it's cool because the way the Palms is set up, it like just goes up to the ceiling. And so when I went out and I looked, I saw like a sea of people, which was really cool. And like I didn't even notice. I was like, oh shit, there's people up there too. I was looking around and it felt endless, but just it was a really, really cool view. And like you said, I was in there with a lot of cool people. I was in there with not just Kozlov, right? I wasn't even in there just with Oleg. I was in there with Rhino and PCO and Dango, even though he's a dickhead, he's awesome, you know? So there's a lot of dudes that have been around the block, know what they're doing. They're good at this that I got to be in there with on like a pretty grand stage of this was TNA's rebirth, right? So as soon as you turn it on, you see me, and that's pretty cool. And I'm in there with people like that.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
I was worried that I was like, okay, Rhino's gonna go out, and then I'll come out after. I was like, I almost feel like it should be the other way around because I feel like Rhino will get more love. I was walking around with
Yeah.
Rhino earlier in the day, and every 5 seconds somebody stopped to take a picture with Rhino. So I was like, oh, they might not really care that Jake something got out there. But as soon as I came out, they blew up. Like it meant a lot
It
to me.
worked. It
It
worked.
worked. Yeah. I was like, I guess maybe these guys know what they're doing.
The Jake something name is one that's it always causes conversation.
Yeah.
Do you ever get sick of the jokes, the puns, the
Oh,
metaphors?
yeah, I hate it. It's my least favorite thing.
I was wondering because I was like, listen, like yeah, I didn't even put on Twitter, hey, you got any questions for Jake?
Yeah.
Oh, what is something?
Well, even that, like, if someone genuinely is asking, that's like, yeah, that makes sense because it's a weird name.
Yeah.
But like,
But
there's
it's one that gets people talking too.
yeah, yeah. You either love it or you hate it, whatever. I don't really care, But it's like, I make a post and let's say there's 20 comments and 18 of the comments are the exact same not funny joke. You're like, oh,
Yeah.
it's like a hive mind. I can only imagine what it would have been like for like The Rock in
Oh yeah.
1997 if he was on Twitter. Every single time he would type anything, it doesn't matter. It's just like,
It
oh my,
still happens.
it
It
still
still
happens.
happens.
Yeah,
Especially over the last week.
you forget how simple people can be until they show you how simple they can be.
So
But
let's look at some of your other names that you've had.
let's hear them.
Some of the
There's going to be a lot that you don't even know about.
we know about Jake Diener and cousin Jake. Like those are pretty self-explanatory.
Yeah,
Jacob Hollows.
that was one that stuck way longer than it should have.
What was the motivation behind that one?
I think somebody kind of just threw me that name. So I was in a tag team called the Painkillers for like 4 years or 5 years, which was awesome. Me and the guy that I went to get trained with to wrestle, his name Brandon, we were in a tag team, and neither of us really knew what we wanted our names to be. So kind of just whatever. And those were the ones that stuck. But like every show I went to, besides when I was a Painkiller, I just had a random name. And it usually was Jake related.
We've got Jake Holmes, which I know you actually performed on
Yeah,
Impact under that name against Lashley,
and
and
that's one I made up, yeah.
Jake Wayne Holmes.
That's the one.
That's the one. That's
That's
the
the one.
one.
So I made it where that was my real fake name. It was Jake Wayne
Yeah.
Holmes, but, I would wrestle under Jake something. So even when I did that TNA show back in the day against Lashley, I was also like, okay, it's my first time getting to be on TV. Bobby Lashley's going to kill me. I don't want to be Jake something if
Sure.
I'm trying to establish this. So Jake Holmes can get killed, no problem.
I also see Jake Shooter listed.
I think that was my first name. I think I got done training at Ring of Honor in Pennsylvania, April of 2009, and it was like the end of April. So then I packed my bags in my car, drove to Michigan, and it was like maybe that would happen on like a Thursday, and then when I got to Michigan, got everything around, and then I want to say my first match was like uh Saturday and Sunday because it was like the Cinco de Mayo like weekend or something. So I did a Cinco de Mayo show and like a little small show in Saginaw, and I didn't have any gear, so I just kind of had like these like longer tights that I bought at Dunham's or something, and I had
Yeah,
a pair of like shooter style wrestling shoes and like volleyball knee pads. And somebody was like, "Oh, you look like a shooter," because I was wearing real wrestling shoes, so they called me
I
Jake
love
Shooter.
it. And the one I'm most interested in that was listed, Dirty Berserk.
Yeah, that's just incorrect. A long time ago, that was not a name. I because is this on like Cage Match or
It's on
something?
Cage Match,
Yeah.
yes.
I think it also says I weigh 238 pounds, which pisses me off because I've weighed over that for so long.
So I used to do a thing called Wikipedia fact check, and I would go through and check it for everybody. And funny enough, I asked EC3, I'm like, it says 246. And he goes, 246? He's like, I've never been over 225 in my life. And he was like, I asked JB to just say I'm 225 because I'm jacked. What's
Yeah,
it matter? After we ran that article, not only did somebody change it, they changed it to 252.
that's
They
so
made
funny.
they made him 6 pounds heavier.
That's
So
really funny.
what is your shoot weight?
Right now, if I jumped on a scale right now, it would probably be like 251 or something like
Uh-huh.
that. The heaviest I've gotten, I looked a lot different. I weigh 269.
Okay.
But yeah, so I usually float between 245 and 255. Um, that's generally the ballpark I land in, especially it depends on if I stay real tight to my diet and whatnot. But yeah,
Sure.
I had like a bio on Twitter or Instagram that I wrote dirty, like dirty, period, because I was in a faction called the Dirty.
Yeah.
And I put Berserk in my bio also because I love Berserk. It's an anime. So that was it.
Okay.
So somebody just assumed that that was a name, I guess.
We figured it out. And guys, you can find out more about Jake Something every Thursday on Access, TNA Impact. Before we go, let the people know where they can follow you.
At Jake something underscore, I think on everything. I think.
By God, there we go. Until next time, my friends, we're out.